was so close, but he screwed it up because he sucks at everything. Trump just had an opportunity to dunk on Canada, defend his trade policy, and possibly steal the crown from the guy who's still wearing it 30 years later. And that guy is Ronald Reagan. The opportunity was gifted to him on a silver platter, his favorite kind of a gift, by the Canadian government. This gift came earlier this week when Canada launched an ad campaign. When I heard it, that campaign stopped me in my tracks. I was watching the Mariners-Blue Jays game when I heard a familiar voice. I stopped cooking dinner and I turned to my wife and I said, "Is that Ronald Reagan?" Because in this ad, the Canadian government used Ronald Reagan's own anti-tariff language. He said tariffs and isolationism in general were basically an economic death spiral, and they torched Trump's entire economic agenda. In his knee-jerk response, Trump lashed out at Canada, severing trade negotiations because they had the nerve to use Reagan's words against him in a massive ad spend designed to reach every American possible. But strategically, this was the dumbest possible response Trump could have picked. And in shitting the bed so grossly, he exposed his lack of understanding of tariffs and how they can actually be used effectively in trade policy. Because here's the thing, you guys. Ronald Reagan was not an economic genius. In fact, most smart economists recognize that the rush to globalize the economy through the 80s and 90s, at least in terms of the working class, was maybe the most consequential series of decisions since the Great Depression. Before globalization, Americans made stuff and other Americans bought that stuff. And trade barriers helped protect our ability to grow internally. They also limited our ability to grow into external markets. This is why union workers overwhelmingly voted Democratic through the golden years of working class jobs. They were only profiting off the work, not off the profit margins, which is why the Reaganomics drive for globalization was the beginning of the end for union workers in America. Now, to be clear, I'm not pro-tariff or anti-globalization. I'm just pro-smart trade policy, which can include some protections for your most valuable industries and free trade for the areas where you can effectively compete and win. But defining and deploying a smart trade policy is difficult when your president thinks in grunts and speaks in pre-K. A smart Trump would have allowed Canada to lean into it and responded with a populist counterpunch, like Reaganomics destroyed manufacturing in this country and now Canada wants you to have more of it because that's how they make money at our expense. I'm not even making that argument, I'm just saying that would have been a good one. In that sense, Canada's ad played directly into his populist hand. But because he's either too afraid to take on Reagan or he's too dumb to know what is actually happening, he tripped like a toddler when he could have pivoted like a president. Just so we're all on the same page, the government is closed. And because the government is closed, the government's HR department said they can't afford to keep scientists on at the CDC. But at the same time, when the Republican-powered government can't afford to pay scientists, the Republican Party of Fiscal Responsibility has $170 million to buy Gulfstream jets for Kristi Noem so she can fly around for her photo ops with detained immigrants. And at the same time, when the Republican-powered government says we might run out of money for food stamps, the Republican Party of Fiscal Responsibility is fine with Donald Trump tearing down the East Wing of the White House. Also, he can build a luxury $250 million ballroom to entertain his corporate buddies. At the same time, while the Republican-powered government is trying to shift the cost of FEMA to states, your dear president, on behalf of the Party of Fiscal Responsibility, claims his feelings were hurt so badly while he was being investigated and indicted for crimes he committed that he just went through the administrative claims process, demanding that the Justice Department he runs compensates him